Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. So, some bad news happened Friday, and it's continued to roll out. Not for me, but for the 2A community, especially anyone who has a 5.56. Hornady had an explosion at their plant. It doesn't seem like it was too bad, but they're not reporting too much on how massive this was, and I don't believe Hornady was actually making any 5.56 ammunition. It's just we're in a place where ammunition is becoming harder and harder to find. Specifically, components for ammunition is becoming harder and harder to find. Enter, AAC, which is Palmetto State Armory's ammunition manufacturing. They're spooled up and they're selling mostly to civilians. But in addition to this, The Truth About Guns came out with this story on today, actually, where the Army's Lake City ammunition plant cancels commercial ammunition contracts for any civilian use. This puts us in a place where one of the most plentiful calibers and one of the most widely used calibers in the 2A is now kind of questionable, but it's not really. Again, with plants like AAC spinning up and other civilian plants, I'm going to actually refer you to an ammunition company who is very, very anti-woke. They stood up to the lockdown measures in Michigan and told them to roll it in a cone. The guy is very based, and the next time I buy ammunition, I haven't needed any 5.56 ammunition lately or any of the other ammunition that I use for my guns because I, stack them deep or as much as I can. Is Fenix ammunition. So Fenix ammunition is out of Novi, Michigan, okay? And they are 100% based on civilian sales. Now, what happened with Fenix ammunition is kind of interesting. They were originally just an ammunition manufacturer, a small mom-and-pop kind of thing that grew into something bigger. But law enforcement got involved during the COVID stuff, and they refused to shut down. Fenix did. And they, the powers that be, the government powers that be, used every way to force they could, and they never were able to shut down Fenix ammunition. And Fenix is spelled F-E-N-I-X. Anyway, support these guys because they're huge fans of the 2A. They seem to be huge based people that we need to support, and we need to support anyone who does what they did next. As a symptom of the government trying to shut their business down and their way of life, they quit selling ammunition to law enforcement and to any military at all. All their ammunition is based on selling to, or their sales are based on selling to us, members of the 2A, people that are just normal dudes who just like to shoot. So I would suggest if you're looking for ammunition sources, especially since Lake City is going away, this will be a pain. And what I mean by that is Lake City ammunition is one of the most inexpensive ammunition sources for the AR-15 platform that we know of. Fenix is very competitive. Let's make them expand. AAC, Palmetto State Armory, another place you should be supporting. Palmetto State Armory is a huge fan of the 2A, and they, their owner, their CEO, has served in the military and have seen what happens in other parts of the world when they don't have the 2A. So supporting two companies that actually give a damn about you and can actually use your dollar and help you is a good plan. That's what we're supposed to be doing is make our dollars count. And, they don't always have to be politically spent. But in this case, you're not using it to back a political ideology. You're using it to back sources that are actually trying to do the right thing just for us plain Jane civilians. And if you look at anything that has been going on in the world and you see the uncertainty that there is going on in the world, especially after the Israeli attacks, anyone who doubts why you need an AR-15 needs only look at some of that footage coming from Israel. As graphic and horrific as it is, these guys went door to door in some of the kibbutzes, which are just communities, and executed families. They knocked doors down, called people out, shot them, raped people. stole people so they could rape them more and use them as hostages. It's now being said that there's 59 Americans that have been killed in this attack in Israel. I've caught flack for people saying, why am I supporting Israel? The truth of the matter is I'm not supporting war at all. War is bad. However, Israel was attacked first. And yeah, their use of force is kind of swift and blinding and kind of unilateral, meaning they have a method of exerting force that Hamas doesn't have. However, Hamas is the one that started this fight, and the best way you can end a fight is by ending the people that started the fight. And in war, there is no such thing as non-civilian casualties, meaning that you're going to have civilian casualties on both sides. Hamas actively went out and attacked innocent civilians. Therefore, anything else that is being justified, in my opinion, is fine. In the wake of this, you're seeing lots of leftist groups. There's one group in particular that I think it's really ironic that they would support a cause or a group that actually calls for their extinction, and that's Queers for Palestine. I don't think they understand that's like KFC, chickens for KFC or mice for cats. Anyone who has come out at any place in time would not be welcome in Palestine. They would not be welcome by Hamas. They would be killed. They're useful idiots. They get to show everybody that their butt, get up there and do stupid stuff and make the cause known, but in the end, they would be the first to be lined up against a wall or thrown off a building, because that's what Hamas likes to do with anyone in the LGBT, the alphabet community. Those guys, they're not part of them. So it's really funny to see these leftist organizations like Black Lives Matter, who have come out in support of these groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, are now being demonized as they have been now. They should have been in the past. BLM has never been a good group. Anyone who calls for socialism is a communist just in another uniform. And these guys, AOC, Ilhan Omar, all these folks that were part of that group that in the same vein as Black Lives Matter, they are anti-American outright. When I say that, I mean they are anti the way of American life. They want us to regress back to where we were with racial barriers that up till these guys started getting more and more popular didn't exist. And they want to go back to the 60s where there is such a thing as segregation, and that, separate but equal is a thing. But they're not even looking for equal. They're looking for better than separate but equal. They have drawn a target on any American who believes that you should be colorblind or that you should be believe in the Constitution. In that same vein, you're seeing judges actually not backing their oath. In New Mexico, we have a judge who actually said it was okay. It's a Supreme Court judge, actually, I believe, who actually said it's okay for our governor in New Mexico, our little Hitler, to go ahead and keep that gun ban in place for public places. Now, it's had zero effect for crime in Albuquerque or in Bernalillo. In fact, you're seeing just as much crime, property crime, people crime, murders, deaths, as we've always seen in Albuquerque. So, as we knew, this would be a net zero thing that wouldn't get anything done, because criminals don't obey laws. That's why they're criminals. And anyone who has been in the 2A as long as I have, or in this side of the fence, knows that's the case. So we're in that special golden hour where we need to do our best to save our country, in my humble opinion. And what does that mean? That means being the best representative of the 2A, being the best person you possibly can. We need to be better than these guys that are doing this stuff, but we need to tell the truth and actually expose these people for what they really are. We've been doing this for a long time. Every one of us that lived through the COVID stuff, we're calling out by name the people that were perpetrating this. These are the people that are in power now that are still trying to do bad things. The Republicans are now in this mode where they're trying to get another Speaker of the House vote set. We're now 2 weeks, I guess, without the government, yet the government still keeps ticking because that's what the deep state does. The government's going to government. I've been advocating more and more lately peaceful non-compliance, and that's what we're having to do. It seems to be working. But they are actively going after people still with FRT triggers and pistol braces that are showing them off because they're trying to make a point that you can't outrun the government. And the government's not big enough, and eventually we will prevail. We're still in that place in between where you're out from presidential elections, but we're pretty close to November, which is going to be local elections. Those matter just as much, if not more, than the national elections. Our government was never intended to act quickly. And having all these little pieces, parts that the government has accrued over the years and made themselves large and intrusive by every measure is not how our founding fathers or how our government was never intended to work. The states were supposed to have the same power basically as the Fed does. But what we're seeing is that the supremacy of the national law is trickling down so much that it's getting to oppression in the states, especially if you're in a blue state or behind the blue wall, where these people will absolutely click their heels and do whatever the government tells them to do because they're dependent on the government for money. They're also dependent on the government for any and all resources they can get. There is a reason why these blue states keep doing what they do, and it's because of entitlements, in my opinion. Is that as I've worked more and more in, more of a blue-collar job, which is honest, great work, I've noticed more and more I'm even less of a fan of taxes because taxes take more and more away from me than what they... Well, maybe I was making enough before that I didn't notice it as much. Or maybe I've just changed my shirt enough to know that I'm not the same person I was even a year ago. And to look at the government and what they do with our money and our finances, it's horrible. It's abhorrent. You're seeing people hurting, struggling to make it through, to make ends meet. And our government's incapable of doing anything to help. We have spent our way into a hole and continue to be throwing resources at stuff. We threw money at Ukraine yet again, another $2 billion. Why? What is it getting the American people? We're still involved in a war. We're still using our resources in another war. We've sent 2 carrier battle groups, one carrier battle group and one amphibious assault group from the Marine Corps to the Eastern Mediterranean, or to the west, to the Eastern Mediterranean. I had to think about the directions for a second to help kind of stop what's going on in Israel from spreading. Am I for supporting Israel? I think Israel can support themselves. I really don't think we need to do anything other than maybe that carrier battle group will stop Iran from doing something. I still don't see that being the case. I also see that Israel has had a bloody nose from this, and they're doing a lot of heavy-handed things. They've stricken Syria. If they were to strike Iran, there's no way we're going to be able to contain that. That will spill over, and eventually it will. Are we in the end times? That's something I keep saying as a Christian that I keep fighting myself and going, I don't think so, because I still see too many good people. The fact is that there's a lot of good people that still do a lot of good things. you see them more and more if you're looking for them. But if you're only looking for the negative, you see the negative. I look at these prophecies that keep coming out, more so because I find them interesting. But if I remember my Bible correctly, which I think I do, he says, I'll come as a thief in the night. A thief doesn't broadcast on CNN that these things are happening before it actually happens. And that's what we're still seeing. Are we in the play up to the end of the world? That's possible. Anything's possible. I maybe just have my blinders on and not wanting to see it. But I see too many good people. I see too many people that aren't even in the 2A, just doing good things. I see too many people here locally that are willing to stand up and draw a line in the sand. And that's what we need to do. I think we've gotten to the place we're at because there's not enough people with enough spine to stand up and say, hey, this is wrong. Right is right, is what one of my former bosses used to say. And that's the truth. You can turn the other cheek and hope these people can be kind to you. But I think we're way past that now. Anyone who's gotten power is willing to abuse that power. That's a simple fact. So stack your ammunition deep, plan accordingly, and train. Train in everything. As we look at what's going on in the world, does it not make sense to have, medical equipment? Does it not make sense to have extra food and water? Does it not make sense to have extra ammunition? I tell you this because I love you guys. You guys are one of those things that keeps me motivated in what I do. Is I talk to my computer basically while I'm doing this podcast, but then I hear from my friends one after another that listen to my podcast trying to help me support this. And they say the same things I'm echoing. So where are the rest of the people that are willing to stand up and say enough's enough? We're done. We're tired. You have went past your mandate. And now it's time for us to wrestle that power back. And that's hard. Because anytime you cede power to someone else, they're not willing to give it back without a fight. Are we going to end up in a civil war? That's another one that I keep fighting myself with. I think we're in a civil war, but I think this is a modern civil war. We're not going to see people line up shoulder to shoulder and go against the federal government. Now, what you're going to see is what we're seeing now. People saying they've had enough and they're just not going along with it anymore. There is going to be a point in time where those people in uniform don't matter anymore. When that happens, that's when we'll start seeing a lot of bad things, possibly some good things. Because the first people that see that those people in uniform don't matter are usually criminals. And they're usually the ones that'll start doing bad stuff. I keep looking at this stuff, thinking about Jason Aldean's song where try this in a small town. Try that in a small town, right? The day of jihad happened Friday. And I think there was one knife attack in Georgia. That's because smaller towns, people know that if you do, not only are there those type of people that would perpetrate these acts, they're small in number, they wouldn't be everywhere at once as much as we like to be terrified and think they are. They don't have the numbers or the wherewithal, and there's still enough of us people, simple dudes, that will draw on fire and kill them because we're not playing anymore. We know what the situation is now. The stuff that happened in Israel could happen here. I've looked at that scenario. Our border has been so porous and so broken, and they've caught up to 80 militants from different parts of the world, terrorists, on our border. What about the ones they never caught? That's what I worry about, is one of those splinter cells getting into a large metropolitan area and doing something like they did in Israel. Because they don't care if they live or die. in their mind's eye, in their religion. They think they're going to go to heaven, and they're going to reach martyrdom. There's something to be said about that, because how many Americans would be willing to put their life on the line and die for a cause? We didn't see it during COVID. We've seen it now. There's less than, 4% that have complied with the newest rounds of boosters, and that's by the CDC's own mandate, their own reporting system. Why? Because enough Americans realized that we were sold a bill of goods. I don't know that it's that deadly. I know that it was rushed, and that we don't have enough real data on it to actually make a real comparison compared to any other vaccine we've ever had. Vaccines have been around for a long time, and they've, in my humble opinion, they've done a lot to save us from where we were. When's the last time you've heard of someone getting the mumps? I got chicken pox when I was 18, but I was supposed to get a booster before I ever did that, and I didn't. Those are the things I worry about. Are we in the end times? That's something that I keep thinking about, though, because they brought up the story. If you haven't heard the story, there's something called the red heifer. So if you read the mythos and the stories around it, there's supposed to be a red heifer that is sacrificed, and its blood is made to sanctify the third temple that is supposed to herald Jesus' return. But then if you read the story, you find out that there are people that are actively looking for this perfect heifer to do the sacrifice, so much so that they're trying to even genetically engineer them. Well, would that make a difference? Or wouldn't it make a difference? Because you're trying to force something that is only supposed to happen under a certain set of circumstances. So people are stupid, and I could see them trying to set these circumstances in motion purposely, to end the world. But that's not by design. That's not something that I believe God would want. And that's when I look at this stuff and look at my own faith and my own, I guess you'd call it religion. But it's more so I don't see religion as the right way to go. I think faith is. Faith in the Almighty, but faith in your friends, faith in your family, faith in yourself, all come at a cost, and all reward you in their own way. When you look at this stuff that's going on in the world, are we just going to stand by and let it happen? And I don't mean the end of the world stuff. I mean these people doing very evil acts. We've let our government continually do bad things. And yet no one seems to be standing up but very few people. There's a few people that are trying to. Matt Gaetz is one of those guys that actually stood up and removed the Speaker of the House because the Speaker of the House was just rolling forward, doing whatever the hell the government does. There needs to be accountability. And we're not calling for it in mass. We're kind of just oopa-doopa-doopa-doopa-doo, rolling forward and letting that happen. I'm not. I'm sick and tired of it. And I'm ready to put it down and say no. I think that came with age. That came with experience and seeing what's happened in the last 3 years. That our government is dramatically flawed. There was a place in time I would honestly say I was a statist. Dyed-in-the-wool statist. I would have never thought the government or the military were capable of doing some of the things that they did during the COVID stuff. I never thought we would leave 90,000 people behind in Afghanistan, because that's something I thought the military would never do. That's what our current administration did. Why should we have faith in any of them anymore? And better question is, if you've lost that faith, like I know a few of my friends have, how are you acting accordingly? That's something I've asked myself. Am I willing to get in the pod and eat the bugs and own nothing and be happy? No, I'm not, because I don't think that's the natural human condition. But I also know that I've isolated myself, or was, for a long time. And I've recently started reacquainting myself with people again and getting out and about and doing things again. That's where I've noticed the good in people. Having lunch or dinner with a friend, and that friend takes care of the tab because they know where you're at financially, or they just are being a good person. That's great. Being able to call on those people, though, call on your friends and ask them something because they know you know something. That's something. Being able to check a story because you've heard it, but you don't know any of the real details, and someone can verify those very quickly for you. That's the community we need to march forward towards. When it gets bad, who's going to be there to help you? And if you've isolated yourself so much and you don't have that community, it's time to reacquaint yourself with that community. It's time to get back and talk to those people because it's raining. What are we doing to build our ark? Like, share, subscribe, be great.